Okay, Baba Geuka. In our last meeting, you gave us the mythological story of Asar and Aset. Uh, Today, explain to us how that relates to us today. What have you and Brother Jim Klingman have done to make that where that mythological story relates to us today?
Very good question, Brother Ali. The importance of having our viewers understand the Asarian myth of the resurrection of Asar and the role that his wife or queen Aset played in locating the body parts of his that had been dismembered by his brother Set is because there was a reason why it was felt that Asar was so important that his body needed to be resurrected and he needed to be brought back to life. There were certain traits, attributes, and qualities that he was said to have possessed in the myth that made it desirable, if not necessary, in the best interest of his people, that he be brought back to life. What Jim Klingman and I have attempted to do, or attempting to do, in seeking to gather together 1 million conscious black voters and contributors, is that we are applying, in effect, the Asarian myth of the resurrection of Asar to this 1 million conscious black voters and contributors campaign by suggesting that there must be among our 45 million or so people of African descent in America at least 2%, 2 out of every 100, who possess those traits, attributes, and qualities that were said to have been possessed by Asar. And just as Asar's representation of those desirable traits, qualities, and attributes made it worthwhile for his people that he be brought back to life and his body reassembled, we're saying that it's just as important, and it applies today with respect to that element among our people. And again, we're suggesting, estimating, perhaps it's wishful thinking, but we like to think that at least 2 out of every 100 black people in America, since there are 45 million of us approximately, 2% would be just about a million. A little less than that, but we rounded it off to 1 million. So we are saying, in effect, Brother Ali, that there must be, and we believe there are, at least 1 million out of the 45 million black people or people of African descent in America who possess those traits, attributes, and qualities that were said to have been the makeup of and constituted the makeup of Asar. So we are trying to do for that element of our people what Aset and Nebathet and Asar's sons did for the body of Asar. We are traveling by whatever means we can throughout the country, seeking to find those 1 million parts of the Assyrian element of African Americans so that we can assemble them into a force to be reckoned with in terms of uplifting and advancing the interests of people of African descent here in America. Now, as it stands, people are beginning to respond to our message. So apparently we have struck on a responsive chord because as it stands as of today, we have representation in about 10 states and certain locations within each of those states. And I'm pleased to say that we're getting responses every day. And so the movement is growing, and we are convinced and confident that it's just a matter of time, and we don't think it's going to be a long time before this matter catches legs, as the saying goes, and in the jargon of the internet, goes viral. And we begin to see a thunderstorm of responses and an abundance of individuals who see themselves as being the caliber and quality of persons that we're looking for, because they too feel that they possess many of those traits and attributes that we have come to understand from the Asarian myth were possessed by Asar.
Yeah, you could. And I think I'm speaking for the listeners and viewers that are watching this your program right now. Within the last 30, 40, possibly, I know about 30 years, we pretty much had a vacuum of leadership. You know, you have organizations, programs coming up, and they all seem to go. They look good for a minute, and they go and drop off the earth, or drop off. And I know I'm speaking for a few of the viewers here, maybe all of them. How will 1 million conscious black voters and their contributors create the leadership that we need to keep us on par, to make sure that we can pass, like you said, that baton off to the next generation and keep them moving in a direction that we need to go as a race of people?
Very good question again, Brother Ali. As you know, the great and honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey said it perhaps as well as anyone, if not better than anyone. Leadership is everything: pain, blood, death. In other words, without the appropriate quality and caliber of leadership, then the rank and file of people are bound to be lost and to go astray. And what you've referred to in terms of the type of what has passed for leadership, generally speaking, for the black collective or the collection of people who are of African descent in America during the past 30, perhaps 40 years, has certainly been less than what was desired, less than what was needed. And as the biblical saying goes, you shall know the tree by the fruit that it bears. So what we see, for better or worse, today relative to our people is a reflection of the quality and the direction of the leadership that has been in place, that has been responsible for us pursuing the paths that we have chosen to go down, or we have allowed ourselves, as the case may be, to be taken down. What the 1 million conscious black voters and contributors would do to correct that problem is that, number one, we're seeking to assemble the very best people that our race has produced in this country to, for the first time in the history of this country perhaps, devote their vast and numerous talents, skills, and abilities to the uplift and advancement of their own people. By and large, as you know, what we have done typically in this country is that as we have produced outstanding people, and God knows we have produced some outstanding people in America, especially of recent vintage or more recent vintage, the best and the brightest people that we have produced have plied their trade or contributed their service to, in fact, the maintenance and strengthening of the system of racism and white supremacy that constitutes America. In other words, when we produce a person, for example, who is a valedictorian in their class, how often do you find that person going to work in the employ of black people? Invariably, that person as sharp and bright and talented and skilled and knowledgeable as he or she may be, is going to end up working for or in the employ of the system or some aspect thereof of racism and white supremacy in America. Similarly, and where we know it even better, is in the arena of athletics. And I like to use the athletics metaphor because more people can relate to that, I think, than on the academic side. We produce the best athletes, especially in the revenue-generating sports of football and basketball, both at the college level and at the professional level. The very best players in both football and basketball are produced by black people in America. There used to be a time when those best players at the college level would play in the historically black colleges and universities because of discrimination. In other words, black folks were not allowed to go to most of your Division I colleges and universities, especially those throughout the South, where most of them had a tendency to be with the biggest and the best programs. So as a result, and almost by default, our HBCUs got the best and most talented athletes, the ones that are referred to nowadays as blue chip athletes. They plied their trade in the HBCUs, and therefore the best football and basketball to be found on college campuses was actually played at the historically black colleges and universities. And as a result, the HBCUs tended to be, for all effective intents and purposes, the equivalent of a farm system or a farm team system for the professional leagues, the NBA for basketball, the NFL for football. Now comes integration, and of a sudden, those same blue chip athletes would prefer to go to the so-called Division I colleges and universities, most particularly those in the South where they could not attend in the past. And so nowadays, fast forward, the very best quality of football and basketball is played not in the HBCUs, as had been the case when our blue chip athletes were plying their trade there, but they are now being played at the various and sundry, I would like to say, so-called Division I colleges and universities. So we are making tons of money. Our athletes are making tons of money for these universities that had to be forced, in effect, to allow them to even attend those institutions. Similarly, and you will recall some years ago, the then president of Florida A&M University, Dr. Humphreys, was removed from office because he had the audacity to actually out-recruit the most prestigious colleges and universities in the country when it came to recruiting black merit scholars. Now, what we're talking about when we say black merit scholars coming out of high school is that is the intellectual and the academic equivalent of the blue chip athletes. Just as the major so-called colleges and universities wanted the best and the blue chip athletes that we produce for their athletic programs, those same institutions, or the ones that focused on academics and intelligence, wanted the very best and brightest academic students that we produce. Well, Dr. Humphreys had a magical way of appealing to and getting a response from such merit scholars as these other institutions were searching for. And so he would recruit them in much the same way as an outstanding football coach would recruit blue chip football prospects. He would go into the homes and roll up his sleeves and eat with the family and be earthy and down to earth with them. And he would come out of there with a commitment that that particular student is going to attend Florida A&M University. The prestigious so-called mainstream colleges and universities were so upset because they claimed that Dr. Humphreys was in effect robbing them of those black students, black merit scholars, now remember these are our children, who they needed supposedly to meet their quota of diversity, so to speak, so that they could qualify for the federal funds that they could only secure if in fact they met their diversity quotas. So to the extent that these institutions needed to have some black students in order to meet those diversity quotas from the federal government, they obviously wanted only the very best and brightest that we could produce. And they felt that they had an entitlement to our best and brightest merit scholars. Dr. Humphreys put a chink in their armor because he would out-recruit them. And they teamed up together and demanded that Dr. Humphreys be curbed. And they went so far as to, in effect, force him to resign from his position so that they would have unfettered access to black, blue chip, idealistic, productive, young people with the best and brightest future, those who were going to contribute the most and best to whoever it was that allowed them an opportunity to strut their stuff and show what they can do. So what we're saying, Brother Ali, Brother Klingman and I, is that we need to take a stand and not stand idly by and continue to allow the best and brightest people that our race has produced to have a single place to go for employment and to show what they could contribute to society. We are not employing. When I say we, I'm talking about black people are not employing black people. So therefore, the best and brightest that we produce, if they are going to be employed, they have no choice right now except to go and work for the Fortune 500 or some other kinds of institution or perhaps some level of government, as the case may be. So what we're saying is that in order to obviate that situation, we need to get the best and brightest that we have already produced to combine their resources, their talents, their skills, and abilities to create black alternative opportunities for our young people who are themselves also the best and brightest going forward. So the 1 million conscious black voters and contributors, if you can just imagine, brother, when we pull this together, and we are in the process of pulling it together as we speak, what would be the array of talent, skills, and abilities, the diversity of what people can do, the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, the airline pilots, the teachers, the administrators, you name it, and it will be represented among that 1 million. And it won't be just any old 1 million. It will be 1 million of the best and brightest that we have. There is nothing that an element of black people such constituted as that could not do, including create and sustain or create a self-sustaining economy, which would enable us to provide going forward employment opportunities for subsequent generations of the best and the brightest that we produce. If we do not do this, or if we fail in this attempt, then what we are putting ourselves into is a situation where going forward, things will not only not get any better than they have come to be as of today, but they will certainly get progressively worse because now we have competition that we did not have in the past. When you see what your president is doing in terms of his proposal for amnesty, for example, for illegal immigrants to this country, he's talking about 11 million of them, when the fact of the matter is there is upwards of 30 million, more or less. And that's on top of those who are already here who are not illegal. So once you give amnesty to this 30 or so million currently illegal aliens from south of the border, what happens is those people effectively become the replacements for black folk. In other words, there will be no longer any need of any substantial part for black people in America, because whatever role it is that we have played in the past and whatever role we're playing currently and whatever might otherwise have been the role for us to play going forward will have been taken over by these other folk. So what we need to do is seize the time, and we cannot make this happen within the time frame that it has to happen, my brother, unless we have the best and the brightest people that we have produced working with us to put it together and bring it to pass.